Hello, and welcome to the Too Spicy installation guide video. The goal of this video is to cover the important pre-installation items to check and verify, as well as the items that need to be thought about to ensure the LPC experience will be shown at the highest quality possible. These items include things such as extra light in the space coming from outside, coming from the venue itself, or even extra noise coming from any source that isn't Le Petit Chef. After pre-installation, we're going to be talking about how you physically put our system together. This is projectors, how they get mounted, how you run the cabling, how you ultimately set the show up, so that way by the time you're done watching this video, you'll have a good and full understanding of the Le Petit Chef installation process. The first thing we're going to go ahead and talk about is just pre-installation topics to think about, to look for, and to ensure are completed before you start any installation tasks. The other thing about LPC is that it's projection images, which means a lot of ambient light or natural light can greatly reduce the quality of the image that the guest will see. So it's important to make sure that if you do have a space similar to this, where there's a lot of natural light coming in, that we have some type of strategy to minimize or eliminate it. This could be something as simple as shades or curtains, but ultimately the goal is to be able to reduce the amount of lighting and allow the image to be as clear and as crisp as possible. The first thing that we want to verify, and the first thing that should be done in regards to the Le Petit Chef installation process, is the electrical installation. The electrical installation should have been completed prior to the arrival of the installing team, and even in some cases the actual hardware that's being sent for Le Petit Chef. What we need to check is that power points have been created. These are outlets where every electrical component is going to be plugged in. We need to check that the system is also complete and that it is separate from the rest of the systems in the room. We want to verify this so that way we don't have an accidental switching on and off of the lights impacting the show. We don't want them projectors associated to a light switch that can be hit, and in the middle of the show it stops and then it breaks that guest experience. We also want to look at the PowerPoints to ensure that there's adequate space around each of these points to allow for our brackets and projectors to be installed in close proximity. What we're checking for is that there's no HVAC, plumbing, cables, piping, etc. that could be obstructing our structures that we're about to be adding. After we've located all of our PowerPoints and we've ensured that it is completed, that system, that it's separate from everything else in the venue, we want to go ahead and we want to rearrange the tables to their final place. This could be in reference to a floor plan that was provided or ultimately in relations to the PowerPoints themselves. The goal is to have the tables positioned in a way that the final projector will be installed close enough to these PowerPoints that cables can reach without having to make any modifications or there being any issues, again, with cable lengths. You don't need chairs at this point, as you'll be walking around after the tables have been placed to do the actual installation, and the chairs can just become a hazard, get in the way, make things more difficult. We have found that it's best to organize the equipment into two categories. First, you want to place all of your projector related equipment on one table, and you want to place all of your animation, projection, hardware, software on another table. The projector hardware would be items such as the projectors themselves, projector plates, ball joints, ceiling mounts, downpipes, lampshades if they're being used, also the power cables for the projectors as well. Also, any hardware like screws, bolts, washers, things like that that will be used for the projectors. Should all be on this first table. Let's call it table A. On the second table, we want to go ahead and do everything that's affiliated with the animations themselves. So this would be the BrightSign media player, the router, Ethernet cables, HDMI cables, HDMI splitters, Ethernet splitters if multiple BrightSigns are being used, power cables for all of these components. A third table, which is not a requirement, but it may just be nice to keep everything organized, is your tools table. This would be the tools and other hardware that you may use throughout the installation, just so it's in one spot. This could be items such as drills, screwdrivers, wrenches, an array of bolts, an array of screws, nuts, washers as well. Ultimately, again, it's there just simply for you to have everything out and laid out in front of you. The other good thing about organizing all of the equipment is it allows for you to verify everything is there, so that you have all the projectors, you have all the plates, you have all the downpipes, etc. It's nice to just lay everything out before you start to just get a final check and a final count of all the items. Once you've placed the ball joint in this hole, you're going to take one of your washers and one of your nuts and you're going to secure it in place. Make sure that when you're securing this ball joint, it is straight with the projector plate and not at an angle. If it is at an angle, it won't allow for correct adjustment of the projector when we're trying to get the image to fit to the table. Once that nut is securely fastened and the ball joint is fully connected, we want to go ahead and get ready to secure this plate to the back of the projector. Securing the plate to the ball joint is very simple. Just line up the 3 holes on the plate on the pointed side to the 3 holes that are on the back of the projector. The screw that you'll be using to secure this plate to the projector are M4 screws, and they will be the shorter M4 screws. You go ahead and you will secure all 3 screws to the plate, and also you want to make sure that the edge of the plate that's raised is coming towards you and not towards the projector. You want to ensure that the plate is sitting squarely on the back of the projector, that there's no space between the back of the projector and the plate. The other thing that you'll need to do is make sure that before you go to attach the plate, you go ahead and you loosen the top right leg on the projector. This way the plate can go ahead and fit without any obstruction. Now, the final step of our projector mount feature structure is the lampshade, if the lampshade is being used. If not, you will do what is shown minus the lampshade. So you will still be connecting the downpipe the same way. You just won't be using the lampshade for an installation that would be, let's say, inside of the ceiling. So to finish attaching the projector to the lampshade and ultimately the downpipe, you're going to go ahead and you're going to take 2 of the large washers. You're going to connect one to the projector side, so the side of the ball joint that has the longer threaded side, and you will then place the other one on the top part of the lampshade. This is where the downpipe will go. The next thing you need to do is you need to go ahead and connect the projector to the downpipe through the holes. So the hole in the middle of the lampshade where your washer is, and then feed the threaded side of the ball joint through the 2 holes and connect it to the downpipe at this point. Go ahead and tighten until you can't tighten anymore, and the projector has now been secured. The next thing, in all honesty, one of the most important aspects of the installation, the aspect that should take you the longest just to ensure accuracy, is attaching the ceiling mount to the ceiling. Now the ceiling mount, remember, is the large square object that has the sliding piece on the bottom. Now when deciding where the ceiling mount is going to be located, you're going to go ahead and find the middle of the table. So if your table is 160 centimeters long, you're going to find the 80 centimeter mark, and you're going to go ahead and mark the ceiling at this point. The projector has to be installed at the middle point of the longest side. The other thing to remember is that this projector does not get installed in the middle of the table, but slightly off the table's edge. We will provide a projection throw image for the installation itself, and this will tell you how far off the table the projector needs to be. Typically, it's between 7 and 12 centimeters, based off of the projectors that we most commonly use. So again, you want to find the middle of the table. On a 160 centimeter table, this is 80 centimeters. You want to go ahead and mark the ceiling at this middle point, and then you want to be ready to go ahead and find the offset where the lens itself needs to be. So remember, the lens needs to be in this specific spot, or else the projection will not fit the table as it is placed. Now, as you're getting ready to mount the bracket to the ceiling, I just want to go ahead and point out a couple of things. First, you'll find on the sliding portion of the mount 3 holes. We ideally want to only use the hole in the middle. The reason why is it provides the most stability to the structure to allow the littlest chance of movement, of shaking, of vibrations, of anything impacting the projector and the projection. The other thing that I want to make note of is that to secure this bracket to the ceiling, you will need 4 screws. 4 screws that will go into the 4 different slots around the face of the ceiling bracket itself. As I've stated, this is the portion of the installation where we need to be the most accurate, because the slightest deviation from the perfect point will have a large impact on the final image. So, when you're getting ready to drill into the ceiling to make space for the screws and the anchors and everything, you want to go ahead and you want to take the ceiling mount up to the ceiling, and you want to mark the 4 spots where your 4 screws will go using a pen, a pencil. We want to take our time with this step, and we want to make sure that we measure twice and cut once. This allows for us to not have to make multiple holes in the ceiling, for us to have to make corrections after the fact. Once we've found the location of our ceiling mounts and we've drilled the holes that we're going to use for all of our screws and hardware to secure the mount, we're going to go ahead and start with the first item, which is the anchoring tool. This is usually a plastic kind of sleeve that gets first entered into the hole to allow any screws to securely hold in place what we are securing to the ceiling. You want to go ahead and get 4 and insert them into the 4 holes that you have already created in the previous step. Once the 4 anchors have been placed, you want to go ahead and grab 4 screws and also make sure that we're placing a washer on each screw just to ensure the screws stay on the bracket remains held in place. Once you have your screws and washers together, we want to go ahead and secure the bracket to the ceiling. The way you do this, simply take these screws using either an electronic screwdriver or a screwdriver. You want to go ahead and secure all four into the four slits on the bracket, into the four holes that you've already made. You want to make sure that you have them as tight as can be, so that way we know the bracket will not go anywhere, that it is secure, and that it can support the weight of the projector and the rest of the mount. Now it's time to put everything together. Ceiling bracket has been attached to the ceiling. The offset has been calculated and locked into place on the bracket using the screws on the side of the bracket. And now it's time to bring the projector up to the bracket and secure it. What you'll need is the projector and all of its mounted components, as well as a screw to attach the projector to said ceiling bracket. The way you do this is you're going to feed that screw through the middle circle, and you're going to feed that into the top of the downpipe. You're then going to twist that downpipe or screw until it's fully secure, and you may need a wrench or another tool to help get it as tight as can be. Once you've completed this, your projector has been successfully mounted to the ceiling, and all of the installation for that one projector has been completed except for running the cables. At this point, you should see ceiling bracket, downpipe, lampshade, or no lampshade, but the projector plate, ball joint, and projector itself. All of these items, if done correctly, should appear as it does here in the video. In looking at the final component, again from top to bottom, your product should look like what we are showing in the video now. If any component doesn't look like what we've shown, then you'll need to take the projector off, correct the component that is out of place, and reattach it to the ceiling. The nice thing about this process is once you've done one, it's just a copy and paste process until all projectors are mounted and secured. Now, this is the second most important part and requires the second most amount of attention. This is actually building that cable system that allows the animation of Le Petit Chef to appear in the projectors. The first thing I want to do is just show you all of the components laid out that you will need for every BrightSign, every variation in the space. First and foremost, you have the technical components, the router, the BrightSign, any type of Ethernet splitter, your cables, HDMI cables, power cables, Ethernet cables. Then you also have your HDMI splitter. This is used when you have multiple projectors showing the same image using the same BrightSign. You'll actually use this HDMI splitter to send that signal to all the necessary locations. And then, of course, you have the projectors themselves. Again, this is just the deconstructed system. And in the next moments, I'm going to show you the different variations as when only showing LPC on one table size, you will use a more simple cable system. First and foremost, you're not going to be needing an Ethernet splitter or any additional BrightSign players. For this, you'll just need your projectors, obviously, your HDMI cables, the HDMI splitter, the BrightSign player itself, Ethernet cable, and router, and obviously power cables for each component. The way that this system is constructed is you're going to take the Ethernet cable and connect it from the router to the BrightSign. What this does is it allows the BrightSign to be findable on the device that will be used to control the show. The show is controlled through an app that can be downloaded on any mobile device or any device that has internet capability. If you haven't connected the BrightSign to the network, or if the device isn't connected to the Le Petit Chef network, you will not be able to run the show. So it's very important to make sure that this step is completed. Once you've connected the router to the BrightSign, we want to go ahead and then connect the HDMI cable to either the projector or, what's more than likely the situation, the splitter. We want to go ahead and connect the HDMI directly to the first splitter in the HDMI in section. When it's connected in the HDMI in section, all of the HDMI outs can then be used for projectors. Now, if you have more projectors than you have outputs, you will more than likely be using a secondary splitter, in which case that last HDMI output needs to connect to the next splitter in its input and repeat the process of connecting projectors to the new splitter. And then connect all HDMI cables to the projectors themselves. The second system that we use quite frequently is a multi-BrightSign system. And again, this is when multiple BrightSigns are being used due to table size, due to projector location, due to anything that would cause there to be multiple animations. In this situation, the most important thing to remember is that all projectors that are receiving, let's say, animation A, needs to be on that single BrightSign system like we explained previously. And any projectors that are going to be using animation B need to be on their own BrightSign system. Where this can become confusing is when you're connecting HDMI cables to splitters. You need to make sure that any HDMI cable that is connected is for that BrightSign player. Typically, we have master and slave BrightSigns. The master controls the whole experience and the slave follows. So it's important that you don't mix HDMI cables, because if you do, the show will not run, animations will not appear on the projector, and it will cause issues after the installation. The other item that we're using with this type of a system that isn't in a single BrightSign system is an Ethernet splitter. And with an Ethernet splitter, what we need to do is we need to take the cable from the router, send it to the splitter, put it in slot 1, and then connect an additional Ethernet splitter per BrightSign player being used, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the number, that is how many Ethernet cables need to be connected to the splitter. And these cables would then be connected to the BrightSign that then feed each of the individual networks. The BrightSign needs to be connected to the HDMI in, and all projectors or secondary splitters will use the HDMI out. So whenever a HDMI cable is feeding a splitter, it will be in the HDMI in, and regardless of if it is going to a projector or another splitter, those will utilize the HDMI outs on our HDMI splitters. And again, it's important to remember that if a splitter is being used for one BrightSign, we are not connecting cables from another BrightSign, as it will not let the system work. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to download the BrightSign app for the device that your venue will be using to run the Le Petit Chef experience. It's very simple. The app can be downloaded from either App Store or the Google Play Store, and can be done like this. Go and select your respective app store. You go up into your search bar, you type in BrightSign, and you're going to select the option that has the B with the 3 lines, the 3 Wi-Fi signs going away from it. On this screen, you would then select Install. The first thing that we want to do once we've downloaded the BrightSign app is open it. The way we do it is just go into where all of our apps are stored and go ahead and select the BrightSign app. Now it automatically looks for any devices that are connected to the network and will automatically show them. As you can see, we don't have any BrightSigns currently showing. The most common reason for this is because we aren't connected to the same network that the devices are on. We use a router system that's connected directly into our BrightSigns to ensure that all of our players are on the same network and can't be impacted by Wi-Fi outage or disconnection to the hotel's internet. And so the important thing is to make sure that our device is connected to that same network. And the way we do that is by going to our Wi-Fi networks and selecting the Le Petit Chef option. Now, the important thing to note is that once you connect, you will be getting a prompt stating that there's no internet on the selected network. We want to either select Connect Only this time or Always Connect. This ensures that we will be always on the Le Petit Chef network in the future. Once we connect, we want to go ahead and we want to select the refresh icon in the top right corner of the BrightSign screen. In doing so, we will see that the app then starts to search for any BrightSigns that are now connected on that Le Petit Chef network. It may take a moment, it may not come up the first time, but please go ahead and give it a couple of tries until the players appear. As you can see, in our test, we have 2 BrightSign players, a master and a slave. We want to make sure that we're always selecting the master BrightSign, so that way we can actually see the buttons for the show. The slave BrightSign will never have buttons, and that's how you know you're not on the correct player. You just simply have to hit the home icon, which we'll see on the next screen, to come back to the Select BrightSign screen and just select the other BrightSign player. From this screen, you can see on the bottom, there's a menu where Variables is located. We want to go ahead and select the lightning bolt, which is the Actions button. This lays out in front of you all of the animations in a scrambled order. The thing that we want to do first, once we get to this screen and we verify that all of our show animations are there, which for Le Petit Chef should be 9 or 8, depending on if you're doing a 5 or 4 course menu respectively. We want to organize these to be in show order to allow the serving team the most efficient and most accurate process for giving the show. We select the edit button in the top right corner, and then we can drag all of our animations into the order that we want them to be shown. We usually will order first as off, then the intro screen, then the courses 1 through 5, the outro, and the celebrations. Celebrations is the additional animation, which is used for special events like birthdays, anniversaries, just any reason someone may want to come out, other than maybe just a dinner. And everything now is set up to go in the order: off, intro screen, courses 1 through 5, and then outro and celebrations. Most of the time, our course 5 can go to our celebrations as well as the outro, and our celebrations animation can go to the outro as well. This gives you the flexibility to decide whether or not you wish to have the animation end with the outro, or you play the outro and then you play the celebrations after. A lot of locations prefer to have the outro be the final animation, just so that way when it does fade to black, there's no break in animations, and the show is then done in its entirety. Now that we know how to run the show, when it's showtime, how to hit the buttons to go from course 1 to course 2, and so on and so forth, I want to take some time to give you some best practices, some operational pointers to make sure that we verify each day everything is operating correctly, that there's no glitching, that there's nothing that can impact the guest experience. Though glitching is rare, it can sometimes happen, and doing these steps can help to catch the items before they become an issue that prohibits us from being able to show LPC. First and foremost, it is a good practice to about maybe an hour to at least a half hour before your guests start to arrive to turn everything on, all of the projectors, and test your animations. And by test, I don't mean sitting through and going and watching the entire show, but going through and hitting all of the buttons to make sure that all of your projectors are working, that they're all in sync, that there's no issue between BrightSign players, but then also just making sure that all the animations themselves are playing correctly, that the audio is coming through, that there's no skipping or anything that would detract from the overall quality of the experience. The reason why we want to do this each day is because even though it's very rare, technology can be temperamental, and what may work 99.999% of the time, that 0.01 can happen, and if we don't test, it would happen during a show when guests are seated at the tables. Now, the other thing that we want to do is also check to see that our BrightSign players are coming up. And this is something that can happen for a number of reasons in the sense of not being able to see the BrightSign player. First and foremost, it could be that the device itself is not connected to the same network as the BrightSign players. And this is something that we can check very easily. We go into our Wi-Fi settings, we go and we look to see the network that we're actively connected to on the device. If it's not Le Petit Chef, go ahead and connect to Le Petit Chef. Or if we are already connected to Le Petit Chef, we want to go ahead and just forget the network. So we want to sign out of it. We want to forget the network so that way it doesn't automatically reconnect and we bypass all of these options that we need to look at. Once the network is forgotten, we want to select the network itself. We want to then go and put in the password, which we've provided for you. And we want to wait, let it go through the connection process until we see that prompt that's telling us that there is no Wi-Fi on this network. And we want to go ahead, we want to connect always or connect this one time. We pretty much want to acknowledge that, yes, we know that there is no Wi-Fi, but we also want to go ahead and connect to the network anyway. Once we do that, we go ahead back into the BrightSign app and we hit the refresh button. We hit the refresh button a couple of times. Sometimes it does take a moment for the players to show up in the app. And once they show up, we then want to go ahead and we can select our master BrightSign player or just the BrightSign player that we're using. And we go back into our normal tests of checking for the buttons, making sure that they all work, so on and so forth. A reason why this may or may not work, or we may not be able to see the BrightSign players if we've gone and reconnected to the network, is also maybe the Ethernet cable that goes into the BrightSign player may be malfunctioning, in which case we can simply replace it and it will be fine. At the end of the day, like I said, technology works 99.999% of the time. These are situations that may occur in those very rare chances, and this is how best to troubleshoot them. I hope you've found this information helpful, and hopefully you're able to utilize this in your daily operation to prevent any concerns from forming and quickly resolve the issues to allow your shows to go off. Our system and projectors come with remotes that will control the projectors, and they're all the same brand, so one projector can be used for the entire venue. Simply walk around, hit the power on button, and give a few moments to make sure all projectors have a chance to heat up and turn on. During first time setup, you will have to go through a few menus and select a few options to get to the actual image. Just go ahead and hit OK through all of the menus until you get to the Keystone. Keystone is ultimately showing the image at an angle. We don't want this, as it will distort the image and make our plates not fit, as well as making the image not fit the table. When you get to the Keystone screen, make sure that the numbers that you see, X and Y, are at 0. If any number other than 0 is shown, go ahead and just adjust it back down to 0 and hit OK. If at any point after your projectors have been turned on and set up for the first time, you notice that an image doesn't look quite right, looks as if it's maybe showing the image at an angle, the Keystone setting may need to be adjusted again. It's easy to correct. On the remote itself, there is a Keystone icon. It is the square with the triangles on all 4 sides. Go ahead and select this and verify that your keystone is set to 0. If the keystone is not, go ahead and adjust it back to 0, 0. If the keystone is already at 0, it could be the projector itself is not straight with the table and could, in effect, be shooting at an angle because the projector itself is at an angle. Something that you may notice when you first turn on your projectors and have completed connecting all of the bright signs and cabling is that the images themselves are not going to be perfectly in line with the tables. This is for a number of reasons, having to adjust the zoom on the projector, having to maybe make some minor adjustments on the projector's position itself, or also making sure settings on the projector are at the correct value. All of these things should be done in turn. First and foremost, understand that almost no table will be perfect right as you turn it on. There's nothing wrong. We just have to fix the image itself. we want to first go ahead and start with manually moving the projector to fit the table and adjust the zoom. This happens when we physically put our hands on the projector and we're physically tilting or turning the projector until we see the image square with the table face, meaning no projection on the floor. The size is correct where it's sitting on all four corners. And then we want to go ahead and use the ball joint screws that are on the front and sides of the square ball joint to lock the projector in this final position, allowing us to know that the projector will not shift and the image will stay consistent. One other item to note is that the zoom and focus must also be adjusted. So just like manually moving the projector is important to have it fit the table, the zoom is also important to ensure that the plates we provide also fit the circle of light where the plates will sit. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that that entire circle is covered entirely by the plate and that there is no animation showing on the plate and that there is no white circle of light showing outside of the plate. And again, this is done through correcting the zoom and the focus. We also correct the focus to ensure the clearest image possible. We want to verify these in a final setup situation. And by this, I mean we want to have a white tablecloth on the table, and we also want to have our plates on the table as well. This way we can verify that the image is as clear as can be and we're seeing the final result before we move on to the next projector. And that way we know we don't need to touch the projector anymore. During the installation, or even after the installation, we may find times where the image doesn't appear, doesn't look right, or we're having a situation where maybe half of the room isn't having an image, or a specific projector layout isn't having an image. For example, the 4-PAX tables are not showing the animation, but the 2-PAX are. There's a few things to check. There's a few options that we can do. The first thing we want to check is that maybe it's just a simple cable issue. Maybe a cable is not connected all the way. Maybe a cable was defective and needs to be replaced. The easiest way to check this, especially if only one projector isn't working, is to simply unplug the HDMI cable from the projector, unplug it from the splitter if a splitter is being used, and plug in a new cable. Plug it into the HDMI splitter and plug it into the projector and see if that image reappears. If, once we've checked the cable and replaced it, it's not improved the situation, it could be that the splitter itself is not functioning properly. Although this more often than not occurs when multiple projectors that are on the same system are not showing an image. If all of the 4-PAX tables are not showing an image, chances are there may be an issue with the splitter. Could be the HDMI cable that's feeding the splitter, or it could be the splitter itself is not actually spreading that image to all the projectors that need it. This is simply a matter of maybe replacing the splitter itself if we've verified that it's not the cables that are at fault. The least common and least likely reason for an image to not be appearing from a projector is that the BrightSign itself is having an error. This is verified by going to the BrightSign itself and looking at the ERR light, the error light. If it is flashing red, it means that there is something wrong with the BrightSign and we may need to explore a technical solution. The technical solution is us providing a factory reset that is done on site, setup files to reset the BrightSign player itself, and then we reinsert the show animations after the first two steps have been completed to verify if it's fixed the problem. If the red light is still persisting after these steps are taken, we may need to look into potential replacement of the device itself, but again, I want to reiterate, this is a very uncommon issue that occurs. More often than not, it has to do entirely with the cable or the splitter, which are quick and easy repairs to make. The last option that should be done before exploring potential reset of the BrightSign player is just resetting the system as a whole. So simply just disconnecting everything from power and then reconnect everything to power, let the system reboot itself, and see if the images appear on the table. We want to first check the cables, the splitters, before doing this, as it can sometimes be a timely process to get everything disconnected and reconnected, but it is still quicker than exploring potential BrightSign issues that, again, are more often than not the issue. At the end of the installation, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to get photos and videos of the entire space. We want to go to all the tables. We want to show a video, some photos of each table, running an animation, running a course. So that way we just have a visual representation of the completed space. It's also nice to also get a video of the space as a whole. So for example, in this video, you see the lampshades, you see the tables arranged, everything like that. It's nice to, again, get the full room completed, seeing that all the work has been done, seeing that everything is running properly, and it's good for us so that we can go ahead and also store it for our own records as well. But at this point, when you're videoing and capturing the end result, the installation of Le Petit Chef at this given venue is complete. I just want to say thank you for your time and watching the video. I hope you have found this guide extremely helpful. If there's any questions or concerns that you still have in regards to installing Le Petit Chef at this venue, please feel free to reach out to us. My name is Gabriel. My email is gabriel@toospicy.de. With any questions or concerns, and please remember that we will be providing projector throw information so that you know exactly where the projector needs to be, as well as a printed version of the steps needed to install all of our hardware, running our cables, and any other aspects of the installation process. I hope you have a great day, and good luck installing Le Petit Chef.